Vols lose a potential starter. It's pretty much a guaranteed starter in the transfer portal. NIL issues? Today's tough question.
Today's tough question. Take a side. Take a stand. The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of offthehooksports.com.
All right, let's start with this. Gerald Mincey enters the transfer portal. What do you make of Mincey's, I would call it very surprising, not incredibly surprising. Incredibly surprising would be, God forbid, Nico transferring or somebody like that, or Cooper Mays up and say, no, I've decided to go to the NFL instead. That would be incredibly surprising. But I would say this is very surprising, at least somewhat surprising. What about you and your thoughts on Gerald Mincey entering the transfer portal?
I'd say surprising, and I'd say alarming in a negative way, because this means one of two things. Either Tennessee has some very talented tackle coming in that we don't know about yet, because they don't have anybody backing up Gerald Mincey. There is nobody on this roster, guys, right now. Or they're out of NIL money. It's one of the two. Those are the only two possible explanations. There's nobody on this roster right now that is capable of stepping in a tackle. Mincey, people are going to say it's not great. Guys, I need to impress something upon you. Not great is not the same as being horrible. Okay? So we have to address Mincey was not great. But that doesn't mean he wasn't the best option they had at right tackle. And at least on this roster right now, Dave, I think it is more than fair to say, if things are as they are right now, Gerald Mincey's the best option at right tackle. Is that safe to say?
It's safe to say, and it is a starter, but as has been pointed out of the message board, and as you just pointed it out, Pro Football Focus rated him Tennessee's lowest offensive lineman a couple of times. He lost his job at one point, I think more because of play than any sort of injury. And so I think he's one of those guys that he's a transitional player. You don't take him if you're Georgia, for instance, or Alabama, and you're at the top of your game, because you've got more talented players to play. But I think he's a transitional player for Tennessee to go from a down program to an up program. So I think you'd rather have him than not, but I think he's very replaceable. Here's the other thing that we need to remember is when it comes to Tennessee and NIL, with them specifically, it's going to change every year. So Tennessee's in the mid-20s in portal rankings, but that's not like high school rankings, Caleb, and you know this, but if you're not in the top 10, top 5 in the SEC nationally, I'm talking about top 5, top 10 nationally among SEC schools, then 1 year can throw you off completely, can throw your cycle off completely. But in this particular situation, it's not like that, because you're looking at a team that had to keep a lot of its current players. So that needs to be a factor as well, right?
Yeah, and it's very obvious they spent their NIL on that, but it's also clear that they spent a lot on Nico, which is fine. They spent a lot on NIL players last year that we thought would pan out, and some were straight bust, i.e. Andre Carrick, and others just didn't pan out. Dante Thornton, I know, battling injuries and things like that. Now, I want to address, I know there's other linemen on the roster. I'm not aware. I do know Vyson Lang and Aiden Bussell are still there. They were members of the last recruiting class in 2023. And they were freshmen. So you could make the argument that maybe a switch flipped for them after their first year. But
by the way, I like Vyson Lang way more than I thought I would based off his high school tape.
Okay, so and that's possible. And there's Aiden Bussell. I believe Trevor Duncan is still on the roster, and Larry Johnson III, Shemarad Umarov. These are all offensive linemen in last year's class. But I'm going to say this about offensive linemen on the roster to believe in them. I don't expect them to be good their first year. Offensive line is one position where true freshmen almost never are the guy that you can just plug and play. I feel like you can plug and play quarterback more than an offensive lineman as a true freshman usually. But I would also say that you typically see them on the field, at least if they show any potential as a true freshman. And we didn't see any of these guys even take any reps for Tennessee this year on the field. That's alarming.
Well, but remember this, in general, offensively, Josh Heupel likes a short bench, both with
Yes,
receivers, even a quarterback for that matter.
but there were injuries on the line this year. And we saw instead Ollie Lane and Andre Carrick and Jackson Lampley and Dane Davis. We didn't see any of these guys.
No, that's very fair. Today's tough question. It's our poll question as well, and it's on YouTube. Go ahead and give the vote now. And it's: are you happy with the Vols transfer class? Extremely, a little, not at all. So with Mincey, I think it's a concern, but I don't think you would trade Mincey for any of the guys that Tennessee got to return, including Cooper Mays, including Keenan Pili, and now Brew McCoy. Today's tough question is brought to you by Andy Mason, AndyMasonRealEstate.com. Best prices, best service in the biz. And Andy Mason will certainly take care of you, known him for like 25 years, a long time. So Andy Mason's great. AndyMasonRealEstate.com. Yeah, I just think Tennessee's in that kind of flux situation. And I don't know that the top programs in the nation are going to be the top transfer portal programs from year to year, right? I mean, that seems like a Band-Aid instead of a cast.
No, and I never expected Tennessee to be one of the top transfer portal programs. But I'm going to say I disagree with you. If Tennessee doesn't upgrade at tackle, I think Gerald Mincey was more important than Brew McCoy. And I know that's a hot take, Dave, but I'm just going to say this. I'll say this right now. It's not about how good the player is. It's how bad the players behind them are. And you can tell me if I'm wrong, but I think the current offensive line is Brew McCoy better at his position than Gerald Mincey is at his? Yes. Are there other receivers in there? Yes. I think the offensive line behind Gerald Mincey right now on this roster are linemen who should not even be on scholarship. So I think they're really, really, really bad. And that's why, again, and you have a John Campbell Jr., but John Campbell Jr. is not great, by the way. He's good. He's solid. He's not great. But right now, the offensive line on this roster are terrible. So, yeah, you guys keep talking about Gerald Mincey was the lowest graded offensive lineman. Who was behind him? Seriously, name somebody who was behind him. I didn't see Vyson Lang see the field at all this year. I didn't see Aiden Bussell see the field at all this year. I didn't see Masai Reddick. I didn't see Larry Johnson III. I didn't see Shamron Umarov. All these players, none of them saw the field at all. Okay? So I'm saying, no, I actually think Gerald Mincey, as of right now, if nothing changes in the portal, Gerald Mincey's a bigger loss than Brew McCoy, and it's not close.
Gerald Mincey's a bigger loss than Brew McCoy?
Because if you lose Brew McCoy, you don't have atrocious incompetence at receiver behind you. You have atrocious incompetence at offensive line behind Gerald Mincey. You have bad players. Not like, oh, they're not great. No, they're bad. That's my speculation.
I think that either Vyson Lang or Shamarad Umarov will be as good as Mincey this upcoming year. That's my prediction. Heard some stuff about Umarov, and I liked Vyson Lang. I did not like his high school tape. I thought he was basically a guy to fill out a class when they took him. I was wrong. And I thought firmly that that Tennessee is able to move on with Mincey now after seeing Lang and talking to some people last night. You'd rather have him. You'd like to have 15 offensive linemen that could play, right, Caleb? I mean, but
yeah. Jim Chaney was the one who said that when he was asked about satisfaction and depth on the offensive line. I never remember him saying, no one is ever satisfied with their O-line depth. Ever. That's like the position you're never satisfied with.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
Yeah, I just think that you may be right about Vyson Lang, but I would have thought that he would have seen some action this year. I didn't think that Josh Heupel would start. Dave, why did Josh Heupel start Dane Davis over him then in the Citrus Bowl?
That's fair. That's fair. We got some people from New York. That's pretty awesome. We appreciate that. Good morning to you guys. It's amazing what the World Wide Web can do. Hit the like and subscribe button. Turn your notifications on. We greatly appreciate that. And we'll have a little bit of Cooper Mays and Jacob Warren coming up on their individual ball reports this weekend. Cooper, as a matter of fact, today. So we'll be able to talk to him about the Mincey transfers. One of the things that's often said, it's just thrown out there, is that, well, this guy left because he's not a good dude. And I think it's easy to throw out some accusations, which have been out there. And I think that there has been a situation with a defensive end that maybe went to Ole Miss, that there were some chemistry issues, but I don't think for the most part that chemistry issues are the reason. I think it's too easy to say that. Guy goes out the door and you say, "Oh, I didn't want him anyway." Like when a 5-star commits, like Jordan Seaton to Colorado.
It's always laughable. Yeah, whenever a guy leaves your school or doesn't commit to your school, I didn't want him. Whenever he transfers to your school or flips to your school, well, he's the greatest character person in the history of the world, and he's just a very mature young man, and I'm so excited about him. Yeah, we don't. I mean, that's how this works always with fans. So yeah, that's. I get it, Tennessee fans. Everybody on your team is high character and quality, and everybody who doesn't want to be on your team is a head case and terrible.
It's probably not always the truth, but it is from time to time.